Welcome back to the campfire. Take a seat. Hope you're ready for another original horror tonight. If your blood runs cold, just get a little bit closer to the flames. I never wanted any of this to happen, but none of that really matters now, does it? They're dead, or worse, and it is still out there. I don't know why I'm writing this. Maybe it's to warn you to stay away, or is it me you need to be afraid of? I don't know. Maybe I just need to get out what happened somehow, before the end. The first time I saw the eye, I was taking a shower in my apartment. I had just gotten off my shift at the bar and I could feel the grease of the place on my skin. It was just like any other night. I was more zombie than human, going through the motions of my nightly routine, just to wake up early the next day from my job as a dental assistant. I was trapped in this cycle of work, eat, work, maybe sleep, just to barely make it. Life in Kyoto is rough. I need at least one more job and 8 more hours in a day just to make enough to get out of here. I almost didn't notice it, I was so tired. I wonder if everything would have been different if I would have just left it alone. Been too tired to even take that shower. I know that's ridiculous, it would have found me anyway. There was a chill that needled my flesh even though the water was hot. I got this sense that someone was watching me. Can your hair stand on end even in the shower? I shut off the water. The only sounds were the drip from the shower head. I wanted to ask if somebody was there. That's how strong the feeling was. The glass on the shower door was fogged up, so I couldn't see anything in the rest of the bathroom. I wiped some of the steam away from the shower door and only saw the smudged impressions of the mirror and sink. I opened the door and stepped out. I was naked, of course, and usually that wouldn't have bothered me. I lived alone, but that feeling twisted my stomach and made me feel ill. I hurriedly grabbed a towel and wrapped it around me. Hello? My voice echoed off the humid walls that were already showing signs of heavy mold infestation. It was like the tiles were bulging. I felt so stupid speaking since I always made sure my doors were deadbolted so there couldn't have been anyone there. My windows were barred as well, so shy of a fucking battering ram, nobody was getting in. But that feeling, it was like ice being driven right between the base of my skull and the top of my spine like a tent peg, something that disconnected my reason from my emotions. I wiped the steam from the mirror and expected to see something standing right behind me, but of course there was nothing. Calm down, Maya, you're being dumb. I forced a sigh out of me and reached for my hairdryer on the shelf to the right of the sink, and then I saw it. It was in the corner of the bathroom, to the right of the shelf. Under a Rorschach blot of black mold that looked like a coiled worm, it was an eye, looking at me through a crack in the wall. It was yellow with a snake-like pupil. I froze. I was too terrified to scream. It didn't blink as it watched me, and there were black specks floating around in the jaundiced pool of what should have been white. And then I screamed, threw the dryer at the eye, and then I ran out of the bathroom and called the police. This is the first time you've noticed him watching you? Officer Ray, a female cop maybe 40 years old with a deep scar under her left temple, asked me in my living room. The police got there 10 minutes after I called them. There were 2 other officers in the apartment next door to me, the one that shared a wall with my bathroom, the one the eye was glaring out of. Yes, I said. I couldn't even recognize the sound of my own voice. It was distant and tired, more tired than usual. Have you ever met your neighbor? Once or twice when I moved in, about a year ago. I don't even know his name. It's Makoto Oga. Did anything stand out to you then? Anything off about him? My hair was still wet, and even though it was hot, I was a shivering mess. At least I wasn't crying. That would come later. No, I mean, he did look at me a little too long when he was out in the hall when I was moving my stuff in. Like a few seconds more than he probably should have, but that was it. It creeped me out, but nothing else ever happened. A male officer entered through my already open front door. Officer Ray, can I have a word? Ray smiled at me. It was a warm smile, one full of compassion, but it hurt me to see it, like she was pitying me. It made me feel so lonely for some reason I can't explain. She got up and walked over to the man. They whispered and I couldn't hear them. Ray came back over to me. I stood in anticipation, hoping the guy was getting carted off to jail. Miss Skuji, Oga is deceased. My partner just found him in his apartment. He was the one looking at you, we can confirm that? but you don't need to worry about him anymore. I know this may be troubling for you to hear, but I want to give you some relief." Those words held no meaning for me. I stared blankly at her. "We'll deal with it and update you on the situation as appropriate. For now, try to get some sleep." They left, but not until after Officer Ray gave me her card with a personal contact number on it. Both of them bowed and smiled at me before I closed the door on them. Pity in their smiles. It made me feel small. But at least that was it, right? It shook me, but if the perv was dead, as unsettling as that was, then it should have been over. But it was just beginning. I'll fill you in on what Officer Ray told me a few days later. She took me out for coffee on her. I think she was really worried about me. I'm sure I look like the dead with my puffy red eyes. I'm also sure I lost some weight in those few days, but I can't be sure. I hadn't been able to sleep since that night. I ended up losing my job at the bar because I slept through 2 shifts. I just couldn't sleep at the right time, and when I did get to sleep, I slept too long. I couldn't get that eye out of my head. Ray told me that Makoto Oga was a 53-year-old man who had been living in my shithole apartment complex on the outskirts of Kyoto since he was 23. Nobody knew if he had any living relatives. Nobody knew what he did for money. Nobody even saw him fucking step out to buy groceries. All the info the cops were able to drag up were the lease he signed every 2 years for the apartment and some unpaid insurance and pension taxes. And then there was how they found him the day he was staring at me. I didn't see it, of course, but when I think about it, it all comes to my mind in perfect detail. The 2 cops that went into his apartment while Ray was with me, Saito and Iwamura, got a key from the building manager and entered his place. They had to push open the door since there was this pile of trash built up on the other side of it. The smell inside wasn't of rot or even feces as they were used to in bad situations like this. It was pure ammonia. Like the man had hundreds of cats pissing all over the place, but they didn't find any. None of the lights worked. Cockroaches scurried all over the floor. Mold had eaten half of the walls and ceiling, and was probably why mine were also suffering. Strange dolls that looked like scorched mummified babies with twisted snake tails instead of legs were stacked inside of this glass shelf. There were 8 of them. It still chills me to think that was always just on the other side of my wall. The one I tried to cover in fluffy pink anacondas and purple koala bears. I know that sounds childish, but I like it, okay? They comforted me. Saito was the one who found Oga's body. He was in his bathroom, tiles covered in a layer of pinkish grime that Saito actually slipped on. At first, he didn't see anything off, aside from the gross factor, of course, until he saw a gap in the wall by a bathtub that was full of more rust than it had ever been water. Saito shined his flashlight into the spiderwebbed gap and saw Oga in there. He was in between the wall that separated my bathroom from his. He was naked. Oga didn't respond to Saito, so the cop squeezed himself into the gap and was able to take his pulse. The skin was covered in something sticky, but Saito forced himself to feel for the heartbeat in his neck, to which there was none. Hours after the cops had left my apartment, they got a crew to tear out the wall to retrieve the body. I heard them banging it away while I sat up in bed, trying to drown out reality with a cooking show on YouTube, clutching an anaconda to my chest just like I used to do when I was a little girl and Mom and Dad were yelling in the kitchen. Officer Ray told me that Oga was stuck in the wall. His body was covered in what looked like glue. They had to pry his corpse off the wall because it stuck to the wood. Ray didn't tell me this part, but I imagined his skin ripping off when they pulled him away, like tissue paper does if it's stuck to something. What the hell was he doing in there? He was watching me naked while I showered, covered in God knows what. And then he died, in the act of playing with himself? As sick as that was, I hoped that's what he was doing. If he was doing anything else, it felt even more sinister somehow. And what the hell was wrong with his eye? Ray told me it was just the right one that was yellow. His left one was normal. At least I would never have to see it again, I thought. How stupid I was. After finding out about how Oga was discovered in the wall, 2 weeks passed without incident. Of course, I had nightmares each night, always the same. That yellow eye in the wall. Even while I was awake, I thought I saw it in every room, just out of sight, but there'd be this glint of yellow that I could have sworn was the eye. I even had the nightmares in the day while I dozed off at work. I actually fell asleep while holding the saliva ejector, think sucking tube, in a patient's mouth and ended up shoving up into his nose. My nightmare made me jump and I rammed it up there real good. It would have been funny if I didn't get fired over it. In the span of a few weeks, my privacy was violated, I was violated, and I lost both of my jobs. I didn't even know this fucker, and he had single-handedly ruined my life by his death. The worst thing was, that meant I had to spend more time in that apartment. I never was there too often. It was always just a place for me to sleep, wash up in between my shifts, and I had plans to get out of there and rent a small house out in the country once I saved up enough money. But now I had to use up all my savings just to survive until I could get another job. I tried going out for long walks and looking for work, but that would only take up so much time, and I didn't have the money to go places like restaurants and cafes. Not to mention that it's summer and way too hot to be outside for long. Kyoto has this humidity that seeps into your bones in summer and even in winter. You can't ever escape it. And being home all day, not wanting to waste money, I skimped on the AC. My room was a sweaty, mildew-smelling oven. No, it was my prison. I started losing my mind the more time I spent in that place. I'd sleep on the riverbank down the street like I was a homeless person. Got sunburnt by laying out too long. At night, I thought I saw the mold stains in the bathroom getting bigger. That coiled worm of a thing, where I saw the eye, was looking more like a snake to me by the day. I hadn't showered in my apartment in 2 weeks. I cleaned up at a local bathhouse, but that was eating way too much into my budget, so I had to give in and I showered one night. It felt good getting all that sweaty film off of me. I even started to relax a bit, started to think I was getting over the trauma of what Oga did to me. Then I felt it again, that cold current in my blood. I shut off the water and threw the door open. Even through the steam, I saw it. The eye. At first I thought I was imagining it or that this was another dream, until the steam dissipated and I saw it more clearly. It was actually there, glowing yellow in the dark crack. The moldy ink blot above it spread like blood on cloth until it reached both the floor and the ceiling of the bathroom. I screamed and I ran out of the bathroom without grabbing a towel, stopped in the living room. The eye was here too, right under my koala bear, peering out through a newly formed fracture in the wall. Black mold eating away at the pink wall. I threw on some dirty clothes, ran outside, and called Officer Ray. "There's nobody next door, Maya," Ray told me as she gave me a light squeeze on my left hand while we sat on my sofa. She and Saito came over and checked out Oga's apartment. There was nobody there, the eye no longer peering out. But the crack in my living room was still there. Nobody could deny that. The new mold stains were also there. They were snake-like. "But I know what I saw," I told her through half-choked sobs. "I'm sure you did see it. Stress has..." She cut herself off, probably aware of how patronizing she sounded. Saito leaned against the doorframe of my open front door, impatiently checking his wristwatch, but at least he wasn't saying anything. Ray tried again. "This place isn't good for you to stay in all day. That mold is a hazard, and your memories of what Oga did, if it was me, I'd never be able to stay here. I get it. Is there anywhere else you can go?" I felt like the floor was crumbling away from me. "No," I whispered like the already dead and forgotten. I saw Ray's eyes glisten like tears were starting to form in them. She reached into her wallet and took out 30,000 yen and handed it to me. "Take this and spend a few days at a hotel. Get your head on straight." Saito scoffed and shook his head. I took the money but almost dropped it all because my hands were shaking so badly. I tried to say something, but she held up her hand. "No need. Take it. I want you to." "Why are you being so nice?" I asked. I couldn't remember the last time anybody was. Ray got up to leave and put on her police cap. "You remind me of myself." She smiled and walked out with Saito. I heard him laugh as the door shut and her tell him to shut up. I stared at the money. I stared at the mold that even at that moment was spreading up my wall, slowly. Some of it had crept onto my anaconda, even. I got the hell out of there. Bliss. Hot shower in a clean bathroom. Lying on a big bed and letting the blankets absorb me in a well air-conditioned room. No mold in sight. I stayed in that hotel room for 3 nights. Slept for 2 whole days. I was so refreshed that I even had the mental clarity and the energy to go out and look for work on day 3. I got a job on the spot at a yakiniku restaurant. Not the best pay, but it was something. I calculated that I could use half of my savings to move apartments and never spend a single night in my old place again. With the assurance of the new job, I could have pulled it off. Until that last night in the hotel. I was eating fried noodles and drinking cold beer on the bed, watching some reality TV show about Korean influencers trying to find love, imagining that this could be my new life somehow, when the chill came back. I thought the AC must have been too strong. I killed it. My body shook and the hairs on my arms stood up. The air grew moist and dense. I felt watched. I turned off the TV and looked around the room. From the bed, I could see the bathroom next to the front door. I had left the sliding glass door open and I could see inside of it. It was dark in there save for a faint glow I mistook as one of those plug-in LED nightlights. The more I stared at it, the clearer it became. A serpentine eye. My chest felt like it collapsed in on itself and I wished I could melt into the blankets around me. A shadow spilled out from that dark bathroom. It crept up from the open door to the ceiling. It was mold. A living, writhing mold. Eating away at the hotel room ceiling, taking on that twisted snake form as it spread. I didn't bother sticking around. I ran out into the hallway and dialed Ray's number again. She looked annoyed at first. I can't blame her. Saito was there too, and he looked downright furious with me. And again, to his credit, he said nothing. But once I showed them the mold, which had by now spread to cover half of the ceiling and the entire wall by the bathroom, I could tell that they believed me on some level, at least. Saito's squinched, angry face softened with fear. Ray stuttered as she said they'd go in and check it out. I stayed out in the hall with the door open while they looked around the room. Ray came to me while Saito stepped into the bathroom to take some pictures. "Did you see it?" I asked her. "Yeah, the mold is pretty bad. You're saying it wasn't here when you checked in?" She had no confidence in her voice, as if she knew the question was irrational yet had to ask it anyway. "No, not the mold. Did you see the eye?" I nearly yelled this, having lost control of any emotional restraint in my voice. Ray looked on me again with pity. I was starting to hate her for it. Even more so since she had paid for this room. She was about to say something when something metallic clanged to the tile floor in the bathroom. Ray turned around to face the room. "You okay in there?" she asked. There was no response. Despite the humidity in the hall, I shivered. Ray stepped in front of the bathroom door. "Officer Saito." Nothing. She put her hand on her holstered gun. The lights in the room went out. Ray yelled. A man I assumed to be Saito screamed a muffled scream. I saw a flash of light from a gun blast. The thunder of it echoed loudly and almost popped my ears. My knees grew weak and I hunched over as if that was going to protect me. Ray came sprinting out of the room and lashed onto me so hard she dug her nails into my shoulders. Saito was behind her, clinging to her shirt, face no longer red with anger but almost pure white. The lights came back on. The entire room was now black. The mold had seeped into every inch of the walls, the ceiling, the floor, even the bed. It was spreading to the door frame and even into the hallway. I saw something slither out of view to the right, back into the bathroom. It cut a path out of the mold on the floor. It looked like the tail of a snake, as wide as a telephone pole. That night, Ray let me stay at her place. Tried to give me her bed, but I refused and bunked out on her sofa instead. She was single and lived in a nice one-story home near the city center, AC on full blast, no mold in sight. But I didn't feel safe. She and Saito had to explain to the superiors what happened and why Ray had fired her shot in the room. I don't know what she said to them, she never told me, but from the tired look on her face I could tell they didn't believe her. And what happened in that room? Saito was near catatonic after the episode. Couldn't fully explain what happened to him. As for Ray, she said she saw something big wrapped around him in the bathroom. Too dark to see it fully, but almost looked like a person with the lower half of it a long python-like tail. What she did see clearly was a single yellow eye shining in the dark. Ray fired a shot and the thing disappeared. The cops that checked out the room later didn't find the thing. No traces of it like blood or anything. But the mold was there, slowly dissolving the walls. It felt good to be believed. I thought I was losing my mind. Well, I was, but at least I had just cause for it. But that good feeling soon went away. Because if Ray and Saito saw it, and the other cops confirmed the mold at least, That meant that this was all real, and that it could reach me outside of my apartment. Don't blame me for staying at Ray's house. I said the same thing to her, that this thing could come for me at her place, that it was hunting me. She would have none of that though, said we should stick together. Even tried to get Saito to come over that night, but she couldn't reach him after the debriefing. So we sat up late in her living room, downing cup after cup of coffee, watching the walls. She set up a floodlight in the bathroom just in case the lights went out again. Her loaded gun, not her service weapon since that was taken away from her, was on the coffee table between us as we sat on the floor. After a few hours had passed and I had drunk my 5th cup of coffee, I looked at her. "Why are you being so kind to me?" She smirked. "Because you need it. Do I need another reason? You could have ignored me and this wouldn't be happening to you." Ray dodged the question, looked at the bathroom bathed in white light, looked back at me. What is happening exactly? I knew it was connected to Makoto Oga, the man who died while watching me bathe. Beyond that, no clue. I said as much to her. Ray said, "Tomorrow I'll go check out his apartment again. There was a lot of creepy stuff in there that we glossed over since, well, why would we have looked into them?" "I'll go with you," I said, not wanting to be rescued and pitied anymore. Her kindness was making me feel strong for the first time in a long time. She smiled and squeezed my hand. Soon we both fell asleep in the living room. The thing that woke me was the sound like something being dragged through mud. I opened my eyes and the living room lights were off despite us falling asleep with them on. Adrenaline flooded my system and I sat upright on the sofa. Ray had fallen asleep on the floor next to me, but I couldn't see her anymore. Her gun was still on the table, so I grabbed it. The white light in the bathroom was still on. The squelching sound was coming from in there, as was a shadow projected on the wall, its source to the right of the entrance where I couldn't see what was casting it. The shadow looked like a person. A head, 2 arms. The arms were twitching and reaching above the head. Then the shadow grew smaller as if the person was moving away, despite how small the room was. I stood and pointed the gun at the bathroom. I had never shot one before and didn't believe I could actually do it. In a whispered hiss, I said, "Ray!" The shadow stopped moving. The head jerked as if trying to look in my direction. I'll be honest, I almost ran out of the house just then. But I couldn't. Ray was kind to me. I couldn't leave her behind. I crept up to the bathroom door. The shadow grew smaller until I couldn't see it anymore. That sliding through mud sound continued. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped the gun. I held my breath and felt my heart jackhammer against my sternum. I stepped into the bathroom and saw it. Ray was suspended in midair, with a black snake tail coiled around her waist. The tail was coming from a crack in the wall. Her arms were twitching and clawing at the air, face covered in a mask of blood, unable to speak. Her hair tousled and her eyes so wide they looked crazed. She was being dragged into the crack by that tail, was already halfway through it. Her arms and legs bent forward as she was pulled further into the gap. That squelching sound was the sounds of her body being squeezed through the thick mold that covered the opening. Then there was cracking as her shoulders pointed forward and her chest collapsed in on itself vertically, still looking at me with those wide eyes, until her head fell in on itself, until all of her was forced through that crack. That gap so narrow, no adult should be able to fit through it. But she did, and then she was gone, and staring out at me through that darkness where she had gone, the yellow snake eye. It will get me, I know this. I can't run. It will find me. I ran out of Ray's house, grabbing her phone and keeping her gun in my bag. I looked through her contacts to call Saito, but he never answered. I know what's happened to him. It must have got him too. I've infected them. Anyone near me is being taken into the dark. So, I'm here now, in Oga's apartment. Where else should I go? Nowhere is safe. But maybe here I could find something to help me understand this madness at least. I'm writing all this on my phone right now. I don't even know who I'm going to send it to. But I need to. I need to leave something behind. The door was locked, but the wood was so weak because of the mold, I just had to lean into it a bit and it popped out of the lock. The ammonia smell made me gag. I shook as I saw the army of cockroaches run for cover when I turned on the lights. The room looked like a hurricane had ripped through it. Along one of the walls was that glass shelf Ray had told me about, full of mummified infant-looking things with snake tails. There were 9 of them, but I thought Ray had told me that there were 8. I ignored it at first and looked around the apartment. Aside from mounds of rotten trash and rat nests, there was nothing that was of help to me. I don't know what I was expecting. Some kind of answer, some form of salvation. I looked in the bathroom and saw where the cops had torn out the wall to get Olga's body. I went near it and peered through the crack. I could see my bathroom perfectly. It was now covered in fuzzy black mold, every square inch of it. The mold was wiggling like some sea animal searching for prey. Disgust at the mold, rage that the sick fuck was spying on me through here. I went back to the living room and looked at the baby things. The glass shelf was opened, probably because the cops wanted to make sure that they weren't actual human children. I put my hands through the opening and grabbed one of them and put it up to my face. It was made out of wood, I hoped. The face looked like a shriveled apple that had been set on fire. The snake tail was twisted and gnarled. There were metal bracings attaching the tail to the waist like a staple. I screamed and threw it at the mold-smothered wall, and it broke in two, tail separated from infant. A rolled-up yellow paper fell out from its hollow and now shattered body. I bent down and picked it up, unrolled it. The paper was so old and dry I thought it would crumble if I pulled at it too hard. It showed a faded image of a 9-headed snake. 4 of the heads were on the ground asleep. 4 were erect and awake. One was devouring a woman with unhinged jaws. The woman wore a kimono and her hairstyle was like an Edo period geisha. There was some old Japanese script written around the image, but it was too archaic and too faded for me to make it out. I grabbed another doll thing and smashed it on the wall. Another scroll inside. This one showed 2 heads asleep, 6 awake, 1 devouring a woman in a Victorian dress. I destroyed the other ones, every single one of them. Crushed them under my shoes and smashed them into the wall. Each one had a scroll. Each one showed the serpents at different stages of alertness. Each one showed a woman losing her life. One of them was even wearing bell-bottoms for my mom's generation. It wasn't until I got to the last doll that I understood. The scroll I tore out of the abdomen, getting bits of the mummified wood under my fingernails, showed the familiar 9-headed serpent. All heads awake, all 9 of them, and one of them was devouring a woman. But this woman wasn't dressed like someone from the past. She was dressed in a modern-day police uniform, an obvious scar under her left temple. I dropped the scroll onto the grimy floor, took out Ray's gun that I had hidden in my bag. I don't know what I was planning on doing. Shoot the mold-ridden walls? Wait for the thing, the eye, to come for me? But it never did. I sat there in Olga's filth for an entire night, gun trained on the walls, on the cracks from which I knew it could come through. But it never came for me. 9 heads of the snake. 9 victims? Did it not need me anymore because Ray took my place? Because she pitied me? I thought about using the gun on myself. Almost wished the thing would come for me then. What did I have to go back to anyway? The 9-headed snake, I don't know if that means Olga somehow became it, or if it's something else, something he made contact with from some other place. But there were 9 sleeping heads, and now they are all awake. I've been in this apartment for 3 days now, lying in the mold, letting it cover me. I think it's eating me, slowly. Outside I hear screaming sometimes. I don't bother to check the news on my phone, but I see the notifications on the lock screen. Mass disappearances. Something big swimming in the Kama River. I know what it is, and it doesn't need me anymore. Does that make me sad? That it doesn't need me anymore? I almost wish that yellow eye would appear in the wall again, to take me. Then I wouldn't be so alone.